Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today I bring to you my February wrap-up. Is it mid-March? I mean, it might be. Does that mean this wrap-up is late? I mean, it might. But, you know, sometimes time, it just gets away from you, and, you know, whatever. We're gonna talk about the books I read in February anyway. I managed to read 6 books in February. I was very proud of myself. Were 4 of them on audio? Yes, but I still call that reading because I experienced the book. And if you don't consider that reading, that's a debate for a different video. Okay, so the first book I read in February is now one of my all-time favorite books. It was so good. And that is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. So this book centers around the death of a young girl named Ashley Cordova. She is the daughter of a very enigmatic and secretive horror film director, and it's all about this man named Scott McGrath, who is an investigative journalist, and he's kind of trying to figure out what happened to Ashley because it was ruled a suicide, but he doesn't think it's a suicide. And it's a really, really cool book because it is told through mixed media, so there's a lot of different message board posts and Wikipedia articles and other such things, and it's just such a good book. I'm actually really impressed with myself for reading this book because not only is it a psychological thriller, but it's also adult fiction, and as some of you might know, I really wanted to branch out this year with the books I'm reading, and this, honestly, I think this might have ruined me for any other mystery that I read in the future. I consider myself someone who's pretty good at guessing plot twists, and so while reading this, I'd be like, oh, I see what's happening, and then something would happen, and I'd be like, oh, you don't see what's happening, you don't know anything. If you enjoy books that feel like a roller coaster, this is definitely the book for you, because sometimes you'd be like, I'm swimming to the surface, I'm figuring it out, but then you'd be like, actually, I've just been swimming deeper into the ocean and I know nothing about what's going on in this book. I literally guessed maybe like one tiny plot point in this whole book, and like I said, I think this has honestly ruined me for all other mysteries because it was just so well done and so intricate, and honestly the ending had me just like staring at the ceiling for hours because I just couldn't believe my life. So the next book I read was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, and I'd have to say I don't like this book as much as I think other people do. I gave it 4 stars, but I definitely had some issues with it. It's about this young girl named Louisa who becomes the caretaker of a young man named Will, who is a quadriplegic, and he's obviously wheelchair bound, and through that they build a relationship and get to know one another, and that's pretty much all I can say without really spoiling a lot of the book. If you've seen the trailer, you might already know what it's about, but I won't recommend watching the trailer before you read the book, just so you know, because it definitely spoiled some things for me. I really enjoyed Louisa, the main character, and sort of her journey throughout the book and finding herself and her character arc, but my biggest complaint is that I thought this book was way too long. It was about 367 pages, and I think it easily could have shaved off at least 100. There were quite a few scenes outside of Louisa and Will's interactions that I just didn't enjoy, and I felt like they were pointless, and a lot of times we didn't get to directly witness Louisa and Will's scenes together. We were kind of told by Louisa. She'd be like, weeks would pass, and so I didn't really enjoy the pacing in that way, and I just felt like there was weird emphasis put on scenes with Louisa and other characters, and I was just like, why? And as much as I liked the characters in the story, I feel like the weird pacing really ruined the ending for me. It just didn't pack as big a punch as I think it did for other people. And don't get me wrong, I am a huge book crier. I cry at books all the time. I cry at books that I don't even think are meant to be sad. But for some reason, I just don't think the ending resonated with me quite as deeply as it did with other people, and I was sad about that. And also, just so you know, this book isn't quite as romantic as the trailer makes it out to be. I don't know about you, but I kind of went into the book thinking it was going to be like this epic romance. And that's just kind of not what it is. I think Jojo Moyes had some other messages that she wanted to get across. I think that's fine. Maybe that's just the nature of the story, but it's definitely not what I was expecting. And I can assure you that when the movie comes out, it will actually ruin my life. I'm sure I will come out of the theater with a swollen face. And then I read, or should I say listened, to the first 4 books of the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So essentially this series revolves around a young girl named Katie, and she moves in next door to Dee and Damon Black, who quickly become her friends. Dee is really friendly and bubbly and nice, and they totally get along, and then Damon is this tall, dark, and handsome, very brooding, moody guy that obviously Katie likes, because just so you know, these are very cliche books. And then Katie comes to realize not everything is as it seems, and Dee and Damon are actually aliens. So I don't want to classify these books as guilty reads because I don't think you should feel guilty for anything you read, but I definitely would not classify them as literary masterpieces. I literally read the first 4 books in like 2 weeks. I mean, I listened to them on audio, so that helped because I was like listening to them while I was at work, but there was just something about them that was just so fun. The writing style isn't terrible. It's not great. It's a little repetitive, but I thought plot-wise it was actually pretty unique. I haven't read a lot of alien books, and so everything that came about was kind of new. It did give me a lot of Twilight feels, but I didn't really mind that because I kind of felt like the quality was a few steps above Twilight. I've heard a lot of people say that they don't like Damon, the love interest, and I totally and completely understand. He's extremely problematic and a little misogynist at times and very frustrating, and the first 2 books are very love-hate between Katie and Damon, but I really enjoyed that. I just thought it was so much fun. It kind of reminded me of watching like a cheesy TV show where you just like want 2 characters to get together even though they're like terrible for each other. Like, I just didn't care. I honestly was considering Katie and Damon kind of like a trash ship for me. The first and second books are probably my favorite because that's kind of when Katie and Damon are not together yet, and so there's a lot of will they, won't they, and I just really enjoyed that. But I will say in the 3rd and 4th book, I really enjoyed the addition of Damon's perspective. I thought that was a good idea because I liked hearing what Damon was thinking. The 3rd one was definitely my least favorite. I thought the plot was really disorganized and there were a lot of scenes competing to be like the climax of the story. It'd be like, oh, I fought this bad guy and then everything calmed down, and then I fought this bad guy and then everything calmed down, and then I did this and everything calmed down. And the only thing that really redeemed it for me is that it ended on a cliffhanger, which I enjoyed because the 1st and 2nd books kind of like tied up really nicely, and I wished they had ended on more of cliffhangers, especially since it's such a long series. I actually initially really liked the 4th one. I felt like the plot was very different from the first 3 books, and I was excited to see where it was going. But the romance, I know that they're meant to be romance books, it was just too upfront in that book. Like, it just was too much. Literally there was like 100 pages that were just dedicated to romance, and I just was like, but what happened to the cool alien action? I want to get back to that, and I didn't enjoy that. Now that I've spent some time away from the Lux series, I don't like it quite as much as I did while I was reading, but I still have the 5th one to read, so I'll let you guys know what I think of that one. But overall, it's a very fun series to read. It's quick. If you just want some mindless reading, I definitely recommend them, but don't expect Pulitzer Prize winners because that's definitely not what they are. But that's pretty much it. Those are all the books that I read in February. I thought I had a very good reading month. I read a lot of books. I pretty much liked all the books I read, and I felt good about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day. The plot of this book is so complicated. I'm trying so hard to describe it right now. Oh, describing books is so hard. Whatever.